What up, YouTube? It's your boy, Adam of NOLA, and we are getting ready to dive in today to Genesis 31 through 33. But before we get started, I want to give you your scorecard so you can keep score at home if you like. Your scorecard can vary from mine. We always have different viewpoints on the text. But here is what I want you to look out for as we go through these chapters. We have instances of contradiction, drama queen, jumped the shark, pitiful God, polytheism, slavery, split personality, and worthless word. Keep your scorecard handy and keep your drink ready, and we will dive into Genesis 31. Now Jacob heard that the sons of Laban were saying, Jacob has taken all that was our father's. He has gained all this wealth from what belonged to our father. And Jacob saw that Laban did not regard him as favorably as he did before. Then the Lord said to Jacob, return to the land of your ancestors and to your kindred, and I will be with you. So Jacob sent and called Rachel and Leah into the field where his flock was, and said to them, I see that your father does not regard me as favorably as he did before, but the God of my father has been with me. You know that I have served your father with all my strength, yet your father has cheated me and changed my wages 10 times. But God did not permit him to harm me. If he said, the speckled shall be your wages, then all the flock bore speckled. And if he said, the striped shall be your wages, then all the flock bore striped. Thus God has taken away the livestock of your father and given them to me. I don't know if Jacob is a liar. We know he's underhanded and sneaky, but I don't know if he is explicitly being a liar or if the text in the previous chapter was insufficient. If you remember from the previous video, when the last chapter ended, there was this weird, silly, automagical idea that Jacob could make the sheep breed a certain way with certain colors by making sure they saw a certain color while breeding. It was like saying your wife would have a red-headed kid if she looked at something red during intercourse. Whether or not you have red hair or not, whether or not she has red hair, the idea was that if she was looking at something red during intercourse, she would have a red-headed child, which is utter and complete nonsense. At the end of the last chapter, all we got from the text was that this ridiculous method was somehow successful. It didn't say that God made it successful. Now, we know, scientifically speaking, it's absolute bollocks. There is no way that that method could be successful in making sure that you had new sheep born of a certain color, and that then those colors would lead to Jacob having more sheep in his flocks. So I don't know if we're to infer that God stepped in and made this stupid method work, because in the previous chapter, that was not clear at all. Or if we are to believe that the biblical authors actually believed this method could get you sheep of a certain color. Either way, this is very odd. Either Jacob is lying or God intervened without it telling us in the text before this last sentence that God actually intervened. During the mating of the flock, I once had a dream in which I looked up and saw that the male goats that leaped upon the flock were striped, speckled, and mottled. Then the angel of God said to me in the dream, Jacob, and I said, here I am. And he said, look up and see that all the goats that leap on the flock are striped, speckled, and mottled, for I have seen all that Laban is doing to you. I am the God of Bethel, where you anointed a pillar and made a vow to me. So now we're going to have a double social, so let's all drink to this. The two socials that we will enjoy here are one for split personality and the other for polytheism. Where do I get this from? Well, I'm telling you we should drink for a split personality because it says here that the angel of God said to me in the dream. And then Jacob goes on to explain what the angel of God said to him. And apparently, according to Jacob, the angel of God said, I am the God of Bethel. Okay, are you the angel of God or the God of Bethel? This comes back to the classic split personality problem that we see in the biblical text, especially the older text, all the time, where there's this fluid interchange of angel of God, Holy Spirit, God himself, wisdom, all these other names that somehow in some way translate to something about God. It leads to all sorts of debates. Christians want to tell you that this is the Trinity. Jews want to tell you that these are different aspects of God, or that this is the agency of God being put into other beings like other angels. Either way, It's confusing as hell. It causes a ton of controversy amongst theologians and people who like to argue about this kind of crap. Regardless, we have split personality because initially we have the angel of God speaking to Jacob. And then in the dream itself, Jacob quotes the angel of God as saying, "I am the God of Bethel." The other social that I'm drinking to here is for polytheism. What? You don't see the polytheism here? Well, pay close attention. Jacob is relaying this dream that he supposedly had. And in this dream, the angel of God came and spoke to him and then says, "I am the God of Bethel, where you anointed a pillar and made a vow to me." He's not saying, "I am God." He's not saying, "I am the God" or "the Lord." He's saying, "I am God of Bethel, where you anointed a pillar and made a vow to me." In other words, he has to distinguish himself so that Jacob knows which God he's talking to. That's because this is very polytheistic, especially in the early books of the Bible, especially in Genesis and Exodus, etc. It's very polytheistic. So don't think that this is just some fancy way of God talking. He is identifying to Jacob which of the gods he is. He's saying, "Hey, remember me? I'm the same God who came to you at Bethel. I'm the same God whom you anointed a pillar to and made a vow to me." He's reacquainting himself with Jacob because there are absolutely other gods in play. "Leave this land at once and return to the land of your birth." Then Rachel and Leah answered him, "Is there any portion or inheritance left to us in our father's house? Are we not regarded by him as foreigners?" I don't know if we're even supposed to understand that this dream Jacob is describing even took place. It sounds very much like a after-the-fact Band-Aid on this. Like he's telling them now, "Hey, we have to get out of here." And in order for them to feel as comfortable with it as they can, he's saying, "Oh yeah, I had this dream and here's what God told me." This is the first time I've seen where someone is relaying that a dream happened after the fact. Like when he had his famous Stairway to Heaven dream, it said to us in the text, Jacob laid down with a rock under his head and he had this dream. And then it proceeded to tell us what the dream was about. In other words, it was telling us this story as though it was happening in real time. But in this case, we got no mention of this dream whatsoever until Jacob finally decides we're getting the hell out of here. And then he goes to his wives, Rachel and Leah, and relays to them the idea of this dream that previously in the text we have not received any hint of whatsoever. So it sounds like he's manufacturing this to make a stronger case to his wives that, hey, we got to get the hell out of here. Then Rachel and Leah answered him, "Is there any portion or inheritance left to us in our father's house? Are we not regarded by him as foreigners? For he has sold us, and he has been using up the money given for us." When did that happen? I mean, Laban is a sneaky character, so I'm not going to defend him. But it feels like they are making shit up for the purpose of making this an easier sell to themselves that they have to get out of there. This idea that Laban had sold them, knowing darn well that as far as the narrative is concerned, they were only ever promised to Jacob. So maybe he did then sell them to others, keep the money and never give them away. But that was not clear at all from the text. It's like they are just making this stuff up on the fly and then patching it up as they go so that they have a good excuse for getting out of there. All the property that God has taken away from our father belongs to us and to our children. Now then, do whatever God has said to you. So Jacob arose and set his children and his wives on camels, and he drove away all his livestock, all the property that he had gained, the livestock in his possession that he had acquired in Padan Aram, to go to his father Isaac in the land of Canaan. Now Laban had gone to shear his sheep, and Rachel stole her father's household gods. And Jacob deceived Laban the Aramean in that he did not tell him that he intended to flee. So he fled with all that he had, crossed the Euphrates, and set his face toward the hill country of Gilead. Laban overtakes Jacob. On the third day, Laban was told that Jacob had fled. So he took his kinsfolk with him and pursued him for 7 days until he caught up with him in the hill country of Gilead. But God came to Laban in a dream by night and said to him, "Take heed that you say not a word to Jacob, either good or bad." Laban overtook Jacob. Now Jacob had pitched his tent in the hill country, and Laban with his kinfolk camped in the hill country of Gilead. Laban said to Jacob, "What have you done? You have deceived me and carried away my daughters like captives of the sword. Why did you flee secretly and deceive me and not tell me? I would have sent you away with mirth and songs, with tambourine and lyre. Why did you not permit me to kiss my sons and my daughters farewell? What you have done is foolish. It is in my power to do you harm. But the God of your father spoke to me last night, saying, 'Take heed that you speak to Jacob neither good nor bad.' Even though you had to go because you longed greatly for your father's house, why did you steal my gods?" Jacob answered Laban, "Because I was afraid, for I thought that you would take your daughters from me by force. But anyone with whom you find your gods shall not live. In the presence of our kinsfolk, point out what I have that is yours and take it." Now Jacob did not know that Rachel had stolen the gods. So Laban went into Jacob's tent and into Leah's tent and into the tent of the two maids, but he did not find them. And he went out of Leah's tent and entered Rachel's. Now Rachel had taken the household gods and put them in the camel's saddle and sat on them. Laban felt all about in the tent but did not find them. And she said to her father, "Let not my lord be angry that I cannot rise before you, for the weight of women is upon me." So he searched but did not find the household gods. Yes, you read that right. Her whole way of getting out of getting caught for stealing the gods is she's like, "Well, Aunt Flo's visited and I can't stand up." And Laban, being the typical ancient Promethean man that he is like, "Whoa, okay, I guess I'll have to go then." I know these people are ancient and backward, but if you want to tell me this story actually happened and that this worked, this is one of the most ignorant things you've ever read. Whether she has her period or not, he's looking in their tents for his stolen goods. Sitting on the saddlebag, she says, "Let not my lord be angry that I cannot rise before you, for the way of women is upon me." If you think something has been stolen and the only place you haven't searched is the bag a woman is sitting on, do you really think that you are going to just shrug your shoulders and say, "Well, I guess I got to go because she got her period going on"? That is ridiculous. Even by ancient, old-timey, ignorant man standards, that is just ridiculous. Then Jacob became angry and upbraided Laban. Jacob said to Laban, "What is my offense? What is my sin that you have hotly pursued me? Although you have felt about through all my goods, not all the goods, because you didn't go through the saddlebag that Rachel was sitting on, what have you found of all your household goods? Set it here before my kinsfolk and your kinsfolk, so that they may decide between us two. These 20 years I have been with you. Your ewes and your female goats have not miscarried, and I have not eaten the rams of your flocks. That which was torn by wild beasts I did not bring to you. I bore the loss of it by myself. Of my hand you required it, whether stolen by day or stolen by night. It was like this with me. By day the heat consumed me, and the cold by night, and my sleep fled from my eyes." Okay, we're going to drink there. That's a social for drama queen. I understand they are in the wilderness, and he is tending to flocks. That has to be some hard outdoor work. But for 20 years, the heat of the day consumed him, and the cold by night. Did he not have a blanket? Did he not sit in any shade? Did Laban make him sleep outside with the animals? I mean, this is ridiculous. He has 2 wives, which are both Laban's daughters, and a bunch of kids, and he may be subordinate to Laban in terms of hierarchy in this particular enclave. But the idea that he was just consumed at day by heat and consumed at night by cold makes it sound like he was a wild animal. Give me a break. These 20 years I have been in your house. I served you 14 years for your 2 daughters and 6 years for your flock, and you have changed my wages 10 times. That's the second time he's mentioned that, and that was never brought up in the text. Now, Laban is a sneaky dude, so maybe he did change his wages 10 times. But once again, all this stuff only comes out now when Jacob says, "Hey, we got to get the hell out of here." But it never came up in the narrative before about Laban changing his wages all these times. If the God of my father, the God of Abraham, and the fear of Isaac had not been on my side, surely now you would have sent me away empty-handed. God saw my affliction and the labor of my hands and rebuked you last night. Once again, we see that the authors of this text don't seem to have any clue of the lineages going on, because supposedly Jacob says, if the God of my father, the God of Abraham, and the fear of Isaac, no one would say that. You're referring to your father twice. The God of my father, that's once your father, the God of Abraham, that's your grandfather, and the fear of Isaac. Isaac is his father. Nobody talks like that. Even ancient Hebrews can't tell me that they talk like that. That makes no sense. Laban and Jacob make a covenant. Then Laban answered and said to Jacob, the daughters are my daughters, the children are my children, the flocks are my flocks, and all that you see is mine. But what can I do today about these granddaughters of mine, or about their children whom they have borne? Come now, let us make a covenant, you and I, and let it be a witness between you and me. So Jacob took a stone and set it up as a pillar. Here we go again with Jacob, the mighty pillar builder, whose idea of a pillar is apparently find some crappy little stone and stick it on the ground, and that's a pillar. Okay. And Jacob said to his kinsfolk, gather stones, and they took stones and made a heap, and they ate there by the heap. Laban called it Jegar Sahadutha, but Jacob called it Gilead. Laban said, this heap is a witness between you and me today. Therefore, he called it Gilead. That makes no sense. They just told us, the previous sentence, that Laban called it Jegar Sahadutha. But there it says, the next sentence, therefore he called it Gilead. Okay, sure. Therefore he called it Gilead, and the pillar Mizpah, for he said, the Lord watch between you and me when we are absent from the other. If you ill-treat my daughters, or if you take wives in addition to my daughters, though no one else is with us, remember that God is witness between you and me. I love how they're trying to create these covenants when they lied to each other's faces for 20 years. What good does a pile of stones in the wilderness do? Fine. You're making covenants. That's great. Then Laban said to Jacob, see this heap and see the pillar, which I have set between you and me. This heap is a witness, and the pillar is a witness that I will not pass beyond this heap to you, and you will not pass beyond this heap and this pillar to me for harm. May the God of Abraham and the God of Nahor judge between us. So Jacob swore by the fear of his father Isaac, and Jacob offered a sacrifice on the height and called his kinsfolk to eat bread, and they ate bread and tarried all night in the hill country. I want to make it clear here that they are trying to set up a boundary between themselves, basically saying, you stay on your side, I'll stay on my side. And in order to do that, they set up a heap, which from a mapping perspective is a point, as though that is a boundary. If you put a point on the map, you can argue that anywhere you go, you have not crossed that point. Because no matter where you walk around the point, you can say, well, I haven't really crossed it, because crossing it requires some kind of boundary, like a line, not a heap, a single point on a map. That is the silliest thing ever. Early in the morning, Laban rose up and kissed his grandchildren and his daughters and blessed them. Then he departed and returned home. And we have a social here for worthless word. Yes, let's all drink for worthless word. Why am I calling this worthless word? At the beginning of this exchange, it said, but God came to Laban the Aramean in a dream by night and said to him, take heed that you say not a word to Jacob, either good or bad. Well, he absolutely did say words to Jacob. When he first got to Jacob, he was definitely saying some bad words, because he was accusing Jacob of stealing, and he was accusing Jacob of being deceitful. If those aren't bad words, I don't know what is. By the end of it, he's saying good words, because he's making pacts with Jacob to not fight and to go their own ways. But either way, there are good words, there are bad words. God said to Laban the Aramean in a dream, take heed that you say not a word to Jacob, either good or bad. I don't know how you read that as being anything other than God commanding Laban to not even talk to Jacob. And yet almost immediately after that dream occurs, Laban absolutely overtakes Jacob and begins speaking with him, and continues to speak with him through a number of paragraphs until we end up with the sad little pillar of agreement between them in the middle of the wilderness. And nothing happened to Laban. There are no consequences. God's words here where he said, take heed that you say not a word to Jacob, either good or bad, were pointless. I don't know why we have the narrative of the dream, because clearly God wasn't going to do anything about it if Laban did, in fact, say good or bad words to Jacob. So that word from God was worthless. Moving on to Genesis 32. Jacob went on his way, and the angels of God met him. When Jacob saw them, he said, this is God's camp. So he called that place Mahanaim. That's all we hear in this passage about the angels of God, just that they met him. Met him and did what? Like, were they hanging out and drinking beer? Were they playing craps? What were they doing? Did he just walk up upon them? Or did the angels come waltzing into his camp like, yo, brah, it's the angels. What's up? I mean, some of these sentences, some of these little call outs, they're so random and they don't even move the story forward. And I don't even know why they're included. But hey, I guess that on his way, the angels of God met him. And he called that place Mahanaim. Sure. Jacob sends presents to appease Esau. Jacob sent messengers before him to his brother Esau in the land of Seir, the country of Edom, instructing them, thus you shall say to my lord Esau, thus says your servant Jacob, I have lived with Laban as an alien and stayed until now, and I have oxen, donkeys, flocks, males, and female slaves. Okay, there's a social for slavery. Drink up for slavery. Oh yeah. And I have sent to tell my lord, in order that I may find favor in your sight. The messenger returned to Jacob, saying, we came to your brother Esau, and he is coming to meet you, and 400 men are with him. Then Jacob was greatly afraid and distressed, and he divided the people who were with him, and the flocks and herds and camels, into 2 companies, thinking, if Esau comes to the one company and destroys it, then the company that is left will escape. And Jacob said, O God of my father Abraham and God of my father Isaac, O Lord, who said to me, return to your country and to your kindred, and I will do you good. Notice, once again, the authors have no idea what the relationship is between Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. We're supposed to believe Jacob said, O God of my father Abraham. Abraham is not Jacob's father. He's his grandfather. Who the hell calls their grandfather father? But according to the authors of the Bible, which ultimately is supposed to be God, yeah, right, it says, Jacob said, O God of my father Abraham and God of my father Isaac. So does he think he has 2 fathers? Or is it that the biblical authors couldn't get stuff straight? I'm not worthy of the least of all the steadfast love and all the faithfulness that you have shown to your servant. For with only my staff I crossed this Jordan, and now I have become 2 companies. Deliver me, please, from the hand of my brother, from the hand of Esau, for I am afraid of him. He may come and kill us all, the mothers with the children. Yet you have said, I will surely do you good and make your offspring as the sand of the sea, which cannot be counted because of their number. I'm not counting that as an offspring coercion just because this is Jacob recounting again what God has already told him. So, okay, fine. So he spent that night there, and from what he had with him, he took a present for his brother Esau, 200 female goats and 20 male goats, 200 ewes and 20 rams, 30 milch camels and their colts, 40 cows and 10 bulls, 20 female donkeys and 10 male donkeys. These he delivered into the hands of his servants. Every drove by itself, and said to his servants, pass on ahead of me and put a space between drove and drove. He instructed the one in the lead, when Esau my brother meets you and asks you, to whom do you belong? Where are you going? And whose are these ahead of you? Then you shall say, they belong to your servant Jacob. They are a present sent to my lord Esau, and moreover, he is behind us. He likewise instructed the second and the third and all who followed the droves. You shall say the same thing to Esau when you meet him. And you shall say, moreover, your servant Jacob is behind us. For he thought, I may appease him with the present that goes ahead of me, and afterwards I shall see his face. Perhaps he will accept me. So the present passed on ahead of him, and he himself spent that night in the camp. Jacob wrestles at Peniel. The same night he got up and took his 2 wives, his 2 maids, and his 11 children and crossed the ford of the Jabbok. He took them and sent them across the stream, and likewise everything that he had. Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him until daybreak. Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him until daybreak. How do these 2 parts of the sentence even fit together? How does anyone think to even put this narrative together? He sends his wives and his kids away, and now he's left alone. And then, a man wrestled with him until daybreak. Are there random wrestlers wandering the wilderness looking for a match? Are there dudes walking around like, yo, bro, care to wrestle? Like, how does this happen? He's alone in his tent, no Netflix, no wine. He's probably sitting there all night, just nervous and thinking about what's going to happen tomorrow with Esau. Next thing you know, a dude shows up like, yo, bro, let's wrestle. When the man saw that he did not prevail against Jacob, he struck him on the hip socket, and Jacob's hip was put out of joint as he wrestled with him. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the social for jumping the shark. If you have this saga going on, where they're going back home and they're worried they're all going to be killed, and he's sending these people ahead to bring gifts to Esau, and then out of the blue, he's alone in the middle of the night, and he wrestles with some dude all night. Okay, you're jumping the shark at this point. Then he said, let me go, for the day is breaking. But Jacob said, I will not let you go unless you bless me. Is this like eeny, meeny, miny, mo, catch a desert wanderer by his toe? So he said to him, what is your name? And he said, Jacob. Then the man said, you shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel, for you have striven with God and with humans and have prevailed. He has? Now, if you've read this before, you know where this was going, but this makes no damn sense. Then Jacob asked him, please tell me your name. But he said, why is it that you ask my name? And there he blessed him. So Jacob called the place Peniel, saying, for I have seen God face to face, yet my life is preserved. And there is a social for a contradiction. And the contradiction here is simple. We are told in multiple places in the Bible that you cannot see the face of God and live. However, we are also told in many other places of the Bible that people have seen the face of God and they have lived. So this is absolutely a contradiction. And it's so weird how it starts the narrative by saying, some dude just came and they wrestled all night long. And now we're told that this is God? Because if that is God, that does not speak very well for your God. Jacob apparently wrestled your God all night to a near standstill. The only thing that broke it, I guess, is that by the end of the morning, this God figure hurt his hip. That broke the stalemate. Your God is so mighty that one man can wrestle him to a standstill all night long. And I know I shouldn't go here. I know you don't want me to go here, but I'm going to say it anyway. If I told you I was in a tent in the wilderness all night long and some dude showed up and we wrestled all night, what would you think is happening? Come on, man. I don't have to paint this picture. You know damn well where your mind will go. Let's not be naive about this. The sun rose upon him as he passed Penuel, limping because of his hip. And it says Penuel. Is that supposed to be the same as Peniel? Is that like a typo? Because it's Peniel and Penuel. Are those 2 different places? I don't know. Therefore, to this day, the Israelites do not eat the thigh muscle that is on the hip socket, because he struck God on the hip socket at the thigh muscle. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is another social. This one is for Pitiful God, because your God is so weak that one man can wrestle him to a standstill. Yeah, that's mighty as hell. Genesis 33. Now Jacob looked up and saw Esau coming, and 400 men with him. So he divided the children among Leah and Rachel and the 2 maids. He put the maids with their children in front, then Leah with her children, and Rachel and Joseph last of all. He himself went on ahead of them, bowing himself to the ground 7 times until he came near his brother. But Esau ran to meet him and embraced him and fell on his neck and kissed him, and they wept. When Esau looked up and saw the women and children, he said, "Who are these with you?" Jacob said, "The children whom God has graciously given your servant." Then the maids drew near, they and their children, and bowed down. Leah likewise and her children drew near and bowed down. And finally, Joseph and Rachel drew near, and they bowed down. Esau said, "What do you mean by all this company that I met?" Jacob answered, "To find favor with my Lord." But Esau said, "I have enough, my brother. Keep what you have for yourself." Jacob said, "No, please. If I find favor with you, then accept my present from my hand, for truly to see your face is like seeing the face of God, since you have received me with such favor. Please accept my gift that is brought to you, because God has dealt graciously with me, and because I have everything I want." So he urged him, and he took it. Then Esau said, "Let us journey on our way, and I will go alongside you." But Jacob said to him, "My Lord knows that the children are frail, and that the flocks and herds, which are nursing, are a care to me. And if they are overdriven for one day, all the flocks will die. Let my Lord pass on ahead of his servant, and I will lead on slowly, according to the pace of the cattle that are before me, and according to the pace of the children, until I come to my Lord in Seir." So Esau said, "Let me leave with you some of the people who are with me." But he said, "Why should my Lord be so kind to me?" So Esau returned that day on his way to Seir. But Jacob journeyed to Succoth, and built himself a house and made booths for his cattle. Therefore, the place is called Succoth. So I don't know how we're supposed to take this. I don't know if after getting out of this bind and Esau being so kind as to welcome him and to not want to kill him anymore, does this mean that Jacob essentially fled again? Because the narrative says that Esau's like, "Hey, come with me to Seir." And Jacob's like, no, let me hang back because the flocks are slow and I don't want to overdrive them. I'm going to kill them. So please let me get there later. Esau says, "Let me leave some people with you, presumably for protection and aid." And Jacob says, "No, I'll get there on my own time." As soon as Esau's gone, apparently Jacob goes somewhere else, to Succoth. I don't know if that's some kind of shady deal, because I don't know if he gained something by going to Succoth and not to Seir, but it's kind of weird that they just throw this in here. Like, I'm not sure if this was once again Jacob being a sneaky little bastard. Jacob reaches Shechem. Jacob came safely to the city of Shechem, which is in the land of Canaan, on his way from Padan Aram, and he camped before the city. And from the sons of Hamor, Shechem's father, he bought for 100 pieces of money the plot of land on which he had pitched his tent. There he erected an altar and called it El Elohe Israel. So again, I guess we're supposed to believe that Jacob ditched Esau, and I don't think we see any follow-up on how Esau felt, but it's kind of weird after going through all that drama and wonderful reunion, then he just splits from Esau. That brings us to the end of 33. We're going to look at our scorecard. What do we have today? Well, we had one instance of everything. There weren't any multiple tallies here. So we had one instance each of contradiction, drama queen, jumped the shark, pitiful God, polytheism, slavery, split personality, and worthless word. And all of that was in 3 short chapters right here in Genesis. Thank you for joining me here on God-Free Bible Study. Please like, please comment, please tell me everything that I've screwed up down below. I'm sure that you will. I hope that you join me on future videos, whether it's for God-Free Bible Study or something else. If I have screwed up anything, if I have mistranslated, if I have been flippant or disrespectful in any way, I'd like to give this chance for Yahweh to speak up and correct me on anything that I have said. Anything, Yahweh? This is your shot. We don't have all day. Okay, there you go. Yahweh endorses this video. So thank you for being here. Please like, please subscribe. And until next time, lo, I say unto you, stay skeptical.